Jamie stretched and yawned as sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Space Colony dorm. It was the first day of the semester, and he had a new roommate. He didn't know much about this roommate, only that he was unusual. The housing office had given him the description: Zyphorian, friendly, curiosity levels extreme, clothing comprehension minimal. Jamie had laughed at the last part, thinking it was a joke. Now he wasn't so sure. Jamie opened the door to the small dorm room. He expected maybe a few boxes, a bed, and some human belongings. Instead, he found a tall, shimmering figure floating in the middle of the room. Zarn was about 6 feet tall, with smooth, iridescent skin that shifted colors depending on his mood. His eyes were large, deep and purple, sparkling like liquid amethyst. But the strangest thing? Zarn wasn't wearing anything. "Good morning," Zarn said in a cheerful tone. "Is this the place where humans live in pairs? I am ready to commence roommate bonding." Jamie froze. Zarn, shouldn't you wear clothes?" he asked cautiously. Zarn tilted his head. "Clothes? Oh, that thing humans wear for warmth and social rituals. I thought your colony was temperature-controlled, and social rituals are optional, yes?" Jamie pinched the bridge of his nose. "Optional? No, not really. It's, complicated. Look, you should put something on, at least for now." Zarn looked thoughtful. Then, with a broad smile, he extended a shimmering arm. "Ah, I shall attempt your ritual. Please provide guidance." Jamie quickly grabbed a t-shirt and a pair of pants from his closet. "Here, start with these. Shirts go over your upper body. Pants go over your lower body. Socks, on feet. Shoes, on feet too. Hats, on heads. It's mostly practical, but also, socially polite." Zarn nodded seriously and started the process. Or at least he tried. He put the pants on his arms, the shirt over his legs, and one sock on his head. The other sock he waved proudly. Jamie groaned and buried his face in his hands. "Zarn, you are trying, I think, but that's not exactly how it works," Jamie said. Zarn smiled, ignoring the chaos. "Fascinating. Your species has evolved to use fabrics in creative ways. I shall name this experiment Human Dress, Phase 1. Jamie laughed despite himself. "Phase 1? I'm not sure if I survived Phase 1. The rest of the morning was a blur of laughter, confusion, and mild destruction. Zarn tried on every item of clothing Jamie owned, sometimes putting 2 shirts on at once, sometimes wearing pants as gloves. He even tried to combine shoes and socks into a hybrid footwear system, which nearly tripped Jamie when Zarn demonstrated a walk. Finally, after much patience, Jamie managed to get Zarn into something approximating human clothing: a t-shirt, a pair of pants, and shoes, though they were slightly crooked. Zarn clapped his hands. "Victory! I have achieved something." Jamie smiled, exhausted but amused. "Yeah, something works." The moment they stepped out of the dorm, Jamie realized he had underestimated just how uninhibited Zarn was. Other students froze as the pair walked down the hallway. Some pointed, others whispered. Zarn noticed none of it. He waved to everyone and smiled brightly. "This is your kind of greeting, yes?" Zarn asked, tilting his head. It's fine. Just maybe don't hug anyone yet," Jamie said. "People here have different comfort zones." Zarn nodded seriously. "Understood. I shall only wave. This waving ritual is amusing, very human." Jamie shook his head. "You know, humans are really adaptable. You might be a challenge even for us." Zarn tilted his head again. "Challenge accepted." By lunch, Zarn's curiosity about humans had reached a new level. He examined the cafeteria food like a scientist examining specimens under a microscope. He poked at the synthetic pasta, sniffed the alien salads, and even tried to talk to the sentient soup dispenser. Jamie followed behind, embarrassed but entertained. "Zarn, you can't, the dispenser doesn't answer back," Jamie said. "Ah, but it hums. It hums a rhythm. Perhaps it communicates in vibrations." Humans have overlooked this. Subtle music. Fascinating, Zarn replied, taking notes with a small holographic tablet that popped out of his arm. Jamie sat down, sighing. He had expected an alien roommate to be odd, sure, but Zarn's energy was something else entirely. Humans are special, he muttered to himself. We can handle almost anything, but maybe I'll need backup for this one. After lunch, Zarn insisted on helping Jamie with homework. His method was unconventional. For math problems, he rearranged numbers on the table as if they were blocks, sometimes floating them mid-air. For history, he asked, why do humans remember wars so much? Isn't cooperation more efficient? Jamie tried to explain. Well, yeah, but humans learn from mistakes. That's kind of why we record history. Zarn hummed thoughtfully. Recording mistakes, intriguing. Perhaps your species is unique in combining memory with social structure. Fascinating. The day continued with more chaos. Zarn forgot to use a towel after the communal shower, claiming that Xiphorians absorb water naturally. He nearly walked into the library completely soaked, leaving a trail of small puddles. Jamie hurried after him, apologizing to librarians, and muttering about the special patience humans must have. By evening, the pair returned to their dorm. Zarn, now partially clothed in another odd combination, a jacket over his t-shirt, shorts over his pants, sat cross-legged on the floor, examining a piece of glowing alien tech. You know, Jamie, humans are very peculiar, Zarn said, finally serious. You follow strange rituals and yet innovate endlessly. This balance, it is remarkable. Jamie smiled, relieved to hear some praise after the chaos. Thanks, Zarn. I think maybe you're starting to understand humans. Zarn paused. Then his eyes lit up with mischievous curiosity. Understand, yes, but I have more experiments planned. For example, clothing patterns. Humans use stripes, polka dots, and logos. Why? What is the effect on social bonding? I must investigate, Jamie groaned. Oh no. Phase 2? Precisely, Zarn cheered. Tomorrow shall be Phase 2. Jamie laughed, shaking his head. Humans are special, he muttered again. We adapt, we survive, but sometimes we survive by sheer luck. As the lights dimmed in their dorm, Jamie realized that having Zarn as a roommate would be exhausting, hilarious, and strangely inspiring. Humans were indeed special, not just in resilience, but in patience, creativity, and the ability to teach even the most curious alien about the odd rules of human life. The next morning, Jamie woke up to the sound of rustling fabric. At first, he thought Zarn was just moving around the room, but when he sat up, he froze. The dorm looked like a fabric storm had passed through it. Shirts hung from the ceiling fan. Socks were stretched over lamps, and pants were arranged into something that looked like a fort. In the middle of it all stood Zarn, proud and glowing faintly, balancing a belt on his head like a crown. Jamie! Zarn exclaimed, spreading his arms. Phase 2 has begun, Jamie groaned. Please tell me Phase 2 doesn't mean destroying my entire wardrobe. Zarn shook his head. No, not destruction. Exploration. I have discovered that humans use clothing in countless combinations, but no one has tested all the possibilities. Therefore, I shall conduct experiments. Jamie rubbed his eyes. You mean, you're going to try every possible way to wear clothes? Yes, Zarn replied happily. So far, I have found at least 12 uses for socks. Observe. He pointed dramatically at his foot, which had 2 socks layered normally. But then, he lifted his other arm. A third sock was stretched tightly over his elbow. A fourth one was on his hand like a glove. The fifth hung from his head like a floppy hat. The sixth was somehow tied around his waist as a belt. Jamie stared. That's not, socks aren't supposed to. He stopped because trying to explain seemed pointless. Fine, just don't stretch them out too much. I don't have money for new ones right now. Zarn tilted his head. Stretching increases versatility. Humans invented elasticity, yes? Brilliant idea. Xiphorians do not wear clothes, but now I see. Fabric is like a tool. Humans are tool users even. In fashion. Jamie sat down on the bed and shook his head. You know, sometimes I forget how different humans are. We take clothes for granted, but you're looking at them like Like we invented fire. Zarn's eyes widened. Fire? Humans made fire. And fabric? Your species is unstoppable. Jamie chuckled despite himself. Yeah, sure, unstoppable fashion sense. By breakfast time, Zarn's experiments had grown more extreme. Instead of a normal outfit, he wore Jamie's winter jacket on his legs, pajama bottoms on his arms, and a cap stretched across his chest like armor. When they walked to the cafeteria, students stopped and stared. Some burst out laughing. He was wearing pants on his arms, one student whispered. Maybe it's some alien trend, another guessed. Zarn waved proudly at everyone. Good morning, fellow scholars. I am testing human textile engineering. Please do not be alarmed. Jamie buried his face in his hands. He's going to make me famous, and for the wrong reason. At their table, a group of curious students joined them. One of them, a girl named Mira, pointed at Zarn. So, what exactly are you doing? Zarn sat up straight. I am conducting Phase 2, wardrobe combinations. Humans have not tested the limits of their clothing rituals, but I will, Mira laughed. Well, I have to admit, you're original. Jamie sighed. Original isn't the word I'd use. By mid-afternoon, Zarn's antics had spread across campus. Students began gathering in the quad just to see what he'd wear next. Some even started taking bets. I bet tomorrow he'll wear 5 hats at once. No, he'll put shoes on his hands. Wait, what if he wears all his clothes at the same time? Jamie felt both embarrassed and strangely proud. Somehow his alien roommate had become the most popular entertainment on campus. But things got complicated when Zarn decided to improve clothing. Jamie, Zarn said one evening, his eyes glowing with excitement, I have added Zyphorian energy threads to your socks. Observe. He tossed a pair of socks on the floor. They shimmered with a soft blue glow. Jamie blinked. Cool? They're glowing socks. Not just glowing, Zarn said proudly. They also clean themselves, repair tears, and generate warmth. No human has ever made such socks. I call them hyper socks. Jamie raised an eyebrow. Sounds useful, as long as they don't explode. Zarn paused. They might. Jamie groaned. Zarn, that's not okay. But Zarn was already pulling out more clothes, attaching glowing threads and alien devices to them. Shirts began hovering, an inch above the floor. Pants rippled with colors like rainbows. A hat floated gently in midair, spinning. Look, Jamie, Zarn cheered. Fashion that defies gravity. Jamie grabbed the floating hat and stuffed it into the closet. No, absolutely not. If the dean sees this, we're both expelled. Zarn tilted his head, confused. Expelled? That means pushed. Outside, yes? Something like that, Jamie muttered. Look, Zarn, humans aren't ready for floating pants and exploding socks. Keep it simple, okay? Zarn looked disappointed, but then he nodded. Very well. But tomorrow, I will present my greatest design. The humans will see the future of clothing. Jamie groaned again. Why do I feel like tomorrow is going to end in disaster? The next day, disaster began before breakfast. Zarn stepped out of their dorm wearing what could only be described as a clothing hurricane. He had layered 10 shirts, 3 jackets, and at least 5 pairs of pants in a pyramid fashion. Scarves trailed behind him like comet tails. Belts crisscrossed his chest like armor straps. On his head, he wore 4 hats stacked high. Students gasped and then burst into laughter. Look at him. Is that 30 pounds of clothes? I can't breathe. Zarn marched proudly into the quad. Behold, Phase 3, the ultimate outfit. I am proof that humans can wear unlimited layers and still function. Jamie chased after him, panicked. Zarn, no! You can't. Oh no, you're going to fall. Sure enough, Zarn tripped over a dangling scarf and crashed into the grass. The crowd roared with laughter. Some students helped him up while others took pictures. Jamie sighed. You okay? Zarn beamed, unfazed. Perfectly fine. Humans laughed. That means success. Clothing can also be comedy. Jamie couldn't argue with that. Later that night, as Jamie and Zarn returned to their dorm, Jamie finally spoke seriously. You know, Zarn, you've been treating clothes like toys, but they mean more than that for humans. Clothes show who we are. They give us identity, comfort, and even dignity. Zarn tilted his head. Dignity? That is like honor, yes? A personal shield? Jamie nodded. Exactly. Without clothes, we feel exposed, vulnerable. It's not just about fabric, it's about being human. Zarn thought for a long time. His glowing skin dimmed slightly, showing his mood. I see. To Xiphorians, our skin is our identity. To humans, it is your fabric. That is special. Jamie smiled. Yeah, and maybe one day you'll get it right. Zarn grinned mischievously. Of course, but first, Phase 4. Jamie groaned. Please tell me Phase 4 doesn't involve exploding underwear. Zarn's grin widened. I make no promises. Jamie laughed, shaking his head. Humans really are special. We put up with aliens like you. That night, as Jamie drifted off to sleep, he realized something. Sure, Zarn's experiments were embarrassing, chaotic, and sometimes dangerous, but they also made everyone smile. Humans were special not just because they invented clothes, but because they could laugh at themselves and survive even the strangest roommate in the galaxy. Jamie should have known Zarn wasn't finished after Phase 3. The alien's curiosity was endless. By the next morning, Jamie found him hunched over the desk, surrounded by glowing tools, scraps of fabric, and small devices that hummed with energy. Zarn, Jamie said slowly. Why does it look like you're building a bomb out of my socks? Zarn turned around, smiling brightly. Not a bomb. A breakthrough. I am combining Xiphorian technology with human clothing. The results will be spectacular. Jamie rubbed his temples. Last time you said that, I almost got strangled by a scarf that wouldn't stop tightening itself. That was Phase 2, Zarn replied proudly. Now we are in Phase 3.5. Much safer. Jamie sighed. I don't believe you. Floating hats. The first invention Zarn showed off was a hat. It was one of Jamie's old baseball caps, now glowing with faint blue lights. Observe, Zarn said dramatically. He set the cap on the desk, tapped it once, and stepped back. The hat lifted off the surface and hovered in midair. Jamie blinked. It's floating. Yes. Now humans no longer need to carry hats. They follow you automatically. Zarn said. He whistled, and the cap floated after him like a loyal pet. Jamie shook his head. That's impressive, actually. But what if the wind blows it away? Zarn looked confused. Wind? This is a climate-controlled colony. There is no wind, Jamie chuckled. Wait until you visit Earth. The first breeze will send that thing flying into space. Zarn paused. Perhaps I must add anchor thrusters. Or gravitational ties. Thank you, Jamie. Human knowledge of weather is most useful. Color-changing shirts. Next, Zarn pulled out one of Jamie's t-shirts. It had been modified with strips of shimmering alien thread. Now, witness the shirt of infinite identity, Zarn declared. He pressed a button, and the shirt shifted from red to blue to green, then exploded into rainbow patterns. Jamie whistled. Okay, that's actually, kinda cool. Zarn puffed his chest. With this, humans can change their identity instantly. No more buying many clothes. One shirt is infinite shirts. Jamie frowned. Yeah, but what happens if it changes colors? In the middle of class, people would think I'm weird. Zarn blinked. But humans already think you're weird. You live with me. Jamie groaned. Fair point. The disappearing socks Zarn's third invention was more alarming. He proudly presented a pair of glowing socks. These, my human friend, are Phase 4, socks that never get lost. Jamie raised an eyebrow. How does that work? Observe. Zarn slipped the socks on his feet. Then he clapped. Instantly, the socks vanished. Jamie's eyes widened. Zarn? Where did they go? Do not worry. They are still here. Just shifted into subspace. I can bring them back any time. Zarn clapped again, and the socks reappeared snug on his feet. Jamie tilted his head. Okay, I'll admit that's genius. Humans lose socks all the time, but what if they don't come back? Zarn thought about it. Then they will exist forever in the void. A noble end for noble socks. Jamie groaned again. Zarn, you're going to drive me insane. The first test run later that afternoon, Zarn insisted Jamie help him test the inventions in public. Jamie, science must be shared, Zarn declared. The humans must see the future of fashion. Jamie groaned. Or they'll see two idiots making fools of themselves. But somehow Zarn convinced him. Soon they were standing in the student lounge, surrounded by curious classmates. Zarn demonstrated the floating hat, the rainbow shirt, and the disappearing socks. Students laughed, clapped, and even cheered. One shouted, "Do the socks again." Another asked if the shirt could display sports team logos. Someone else begged to try the floating hat. Jamie stood awkwardly to the side, both embarrassed and amazed. Zarn was stealing the show. You know, Jamie whispered. Humans already use clothes for self-expression. You just amplified it. Zarn grinned. Yes, humans are special because you adapt so well. You see my inventions not as chaos, but as possibilities. Jamie chuckled. Yeah, possibilities that could get us banned from laundry duty. The malfunction. Of course, things went wrong. When Zarn switched the rainbow shirt into festival mode, the colors spun too fast, blinding students nearby. Someone tripped and spilled a drink on the floor. At the same time, the floating hat went haywire and started zooming in circles like a drone. The disappearing socks flickered in and out of existence, sometimes halfway visible, making it look like Zarn's feet were glitching. The lounge erupted into chaos. Students screamed, laughed, or ran for cover. One girl ducked as the hat nearly smacked her face. Another boy tried to grab it but fell into a chair. Jamie yelled, "Zarn, shut it down!" Zarn panicked, pressing buttons on his wrist device. I cannot. The fabric is rebelling. Jamie groaned and jumped forward. With quick thinking, he grabbed the malfunctioning shirt and yanked the alien thread loose. The colors faded. Then he snatched the floating hat out of the air and shoved it into his backpack. Finally, he clapped twice, forcing the socks back. Into normal space, the room went quiet. Students stared at Jamie, then burst into applause. Dude, that was awesome. You saved us from the killer shirt. Can I buy those socks? Jamie's face turned red. No, sorry, they're not for sale. Zarn looked disappointed but then smiled. See, humans are heroes even in fashion disasters. You adapt faster than anyone. Truly, humans are special. Jamie sighed, though a small smile crept onto his face. Special, or just unlucky enough to live with you. Reflection that evening, back in the dorm, Zarn was calmer. He sat cross-legged, his glowing eyes softer. I made a mistake today, Zarn admitted. I thought fashion was just play. But I see now it has consequences. Humans mix creativity with responsibility. That balance is hard for me. Jamie leaned back in his chair. Yeah, but you're learning. And honestly, you made people laugh. You made them curious. That's not a bad thing. Zarn tilted his head. So my experiments were not a failure? Jamie smiled. Not exactly, just maybe don't unleash the rainbow shirt again. At least not indoors. Zarn chuckled. Understood. There was a moment of quiet. Then Zarn's eyes lit up with mischief again. But Jamie, there is still Phase 5. Jamie froze. Please tell me Phase 5 doesn't involve underwear. Zarn grinned. Underwear that doubles as emergency parachutes. Jamie groaned loudly and fell back on his bed. Humans are special, but not special enough to survive parachute underwear. Zarn laughed, his glowing skin shimmering with delight. The colony's annual festival was the biggest event of the semester. Students decorated the campus with bright banners, food stalls filled the air with delicious smells, and music from dozens of species played in harmony. It was a celebration of unity between humans and aliens, a chance for everyone to share culture and talent. Jamie had been looking forward to it all week, until Zarn made his announcement. "Jamie," the Zephyrian declared dramatically, bursting into their dorm, "I have finished my greatest creation. Tomorrow at the festival I shall reveal the ultimate outfit." Jamie froze. "No, absolutely not. You are not doing another clothing experiment in front of the entire campus." Zarn tilted his shimmering head. "Why not? Humans love my designs. They laugh, they cheer, they celebrate." "They also almost got blinded by your rainbow shirt," Jamie reminded him. "And I had to wrestle a flying hat out of the air like it was an angry bird." Zarn waved a glowing hand dismissively. "Minor setbacks, Phase 5 will be perfect. I have tested every piece thoroughly, no malfunctions this time." Jamie narrowed his eyes. "Tested how many times?" Zarn thought for a moment. "Once." Jamie groaned. But Zarn only smiled. "Trust me, human friend, this will be the highlight of the festival, you will see. The big day." The next morning, Jamie woke up with a pit in his stomach. The festival buzzed with excitement outside the dorm, but all he could think about was Zarn's so-called ultimate outfit. Sure enough, when Zarn stepped out of the closet, Jamie nearly fainted. Zarn wore what could only be described as a walking light show. His shirt shifted colors slowly, glowing with alien threads. His pants sparkled with tiny star-like dots, twinkling as he moved. Around his shoulders hung a flowing cape made from scarves, each one fluttering as if it were alive. On his head balanced not one, not two, but 3 hats stacked like a tower, the top one glowing faintly. His shoes clicked with each step, leaving small holographic footprints behind. Jamie covered his face with both hands. "We're doomed." "On the contrary," Zarn said proudly. "We are destined for glory." The festival begins. The campus. Quad was filled with booths, performances, and food stalls. Humans danced to alien music. Zyphorians tried human cotton candy for the first time, and robots juggled while balancing on one wheel. When Zarn and Jamie entered, heads immediately turned. Conversation stopped. Students gasped. Some laughed, others clapped, and a few reached for their cameras. "Is that a fashion show?" one student whispered. "Or is he a parade float?" another said. Zarn spread his arms dramatically. "Behold, fellow beings, the future of fashion is here." Jamie wanted to crawl into a hole. Chaos unleashed. At first, things seemed fine. Students gathered around, curious and entertained. Zarn demonstrated the glowing pants, the twinkling cape, and even the hovering top hat that floated above his stack of hats like a crown. But then, things started to go wrong. The cape scarves caught a gust from a passing ventilation fan and wrapped around a food stall, knocking over skewers of grilled meat. The floating hat malfunctioned again, spinning wildly into the crowd. The glowing pants twinkled too brightly, making some students shield their eyes. Jamie ran forward, trying to contain the chaos. "Sorry, excuse me, don't panic, it's just a clothing experiment." But the crowd wasn't angry. To Jamie's surprise, they were laughing, cheering, and clapping. Some students even started chanting, "Fashion, fashion, fashion." Zarn struck a pose. "Yes, exactly, fashion. Is chaos and joy combined?" Jamie muttered under his breath, "or disaster and humiliation combined?" The turning point, just when Jamie thought things couldn't get worse, the floating hat flew into the music stage. It landed on a speaker, causing the sound system to screech. The music cut out. The entire festival fell silent. Zarn froze. For the first time, he looked nervous. His glowing skin dimmed. "Oh no. Have I ruined the ritual?" Jamie took a deep breath. This was the moment. He could either let the festival collapse into chaos, or he could turn disaster into something better. He jumped onto the stage, grabbed the microphone, and spoke. "Hey everyone, sorry about that. My roommate here," he pointed at Zarn, "is from Zyphoria. His species doesn't even use clothes. But instead of ignoring our customs, he's been trying to understand them. He's been experimenting with fabric, colors, and even alien tech, Sure, it's messy, but that's what makes it human, the crowd murmured. Jamie continued, humans are special because we adapt. We take simple things like cloth and turn them into art, culture, and identity. Zarn may not get it right, but he's proving how amazing clothes really are. And today he's showing us that fashion isn't about rules, it's about creativity. The students cheered. Zarn's eyes lit up again, his skin glowing bright blue with joy. He stepped onto the stage beside Jamie, spread his arms and shouted, "Then let us celebrate creativity together." The dance someone restarted the music. Without warning, Zarn began to dance. His glowing pants sparkled, his cape fluttered, and his stacked hat swayed dangerously. The students roared with laughter and clapped along. One by one, others joined in. Mira, the girl from earlier, grabbed a scarf from the ground and twirled it like a ribbon. A group of humans layered jackets and hats, copying Zarn's chaotic style. Even a couple of aliens tried on human clothes, giggling as they mixed and matched. Soon, the quad transformed into an impromptu fashion dance. Students wore clothes in ridiculous combinations: shirts over pants, socks on arms, hats on shoes. Everyone laughed and cheered, celebrating not perfection but creativity and fun. Jamie stood back amazed. What had started as a disaster had become the highlight of the festival. "Humans are unbelievable," Zarn whispered, his voice full of awe. "You take mistakes and turn them into joy. Truly, you are special." Jamie smiled. "And you're not so bad yourself." The aftermath, when the festival ended, students kept talking about the fashion dance all evening. Some called it the funniest event of the year. Others wanted to start a new tradition, an annual Zarn fashion show. Back in the dorm, Zarn was glowing brighter than ever. "Jamie, today was glorious, humans and aliens united through fabric chaos. Truly, we have made history." Jamie collapsed onto his bed, exhausted but smiling. "History, huh? More like embarrassment, but yeah, it worked out." Zarn tilted his head. "You are not angry?" Jamie chuckled. "I was, but then I saw how much fun everyone had. You reminded me that humans don't just survive mistakes, we celebrate them. That's what makes us special." Zarn nodded thoughtfully. "Then Phase 6 shall be even greater." Jamie groaned. No more phases, please. I need a break." Zarn grinned. "Very well, a short break, but inspiration waits for no one." Jamie laughed and shook his head. "Humans may be special, but living with a Xiphorian is going to kill me." Zarn only smiled, his eyes glowing with pure joy. The festival fiasco had ended with laughter and applause. By the next day, word had spread across the entire campus. Everyone was still talking about the fashion dance. Videos of Zarn spinning in his glowing pants and flying hats had already gone viral on the colony's student network. For Jamie, it was both a relief and a problem. On one hand, no one was angry. On the other hand, now people wanted more. "Jamie!" Mira shouted as she ran up to him outside the cafeteria. "When's the next fashion show? That was amazing." Jamie sighed. "It wasn't a fashion show, it was an accident." "Best accident ever," Mira said, grinning. "You guys should do it again, maybe even host a workshop." Jamie groaned. A workshop? But he didn't have time to argue. Zarn appeared, glowing with excitement. "Jamie, did you hear? They want more of us. Phase 6 will be interactive." Jamie rubbed his face. "Please stop naming everything a phase." The workshop idea later that evening, the dean of students called Jamie and Zarn into his office. The dean was a serious man with a gray beard, but even he struggled to hide a smile. "You two caused chaos," the dean said firmly. "But it was the kind of chaos this campus needs. You brought students together. Different species, different cultures, all laughing and sharing. That's rare." Jamie blinked. "So, we're not in trouble?" The dean chuckled. "On the contrary, we want you to host a workshop next week. Call it Human-Alien Fashion Fusion." Zarn practically glowed like a star. "Yes, a glorious collaboration of fabric and technology," Jamie muttered. "Or a glorious disaster." But deep down, he was smiling too. Preparing for the workshop the following days were busy. Zarn treated the workshop like the most important mission of his life. He gathered every piece of clothing. He could find shirts, jackets, scarves, even kitchen towels. He also built more gadgets, hats that spun slowly but safely, scarves that glowed softly without choking anyone, and socks that only disappeared for 10 seconds at a time. Jamie worked. On the practical side, he wrote safety rules, made charts to explain human fashion history, and begged Zarn not to bring underwear parachutes. "Jamie," Zarn said one night, "you are the balance to my chaos. Together, we shall succeed." Jamie smirked. "That's one way to put it. Another way is I stop you from blowing up the laundry room." They both laughed. The workshop begins. The big day arrived. The student hall was packed with humans and aliens, all curious to see what Zarn and Jamie would do. Tables were filled with piles of clothes, from simple t-shirts to glowing Xiphorian fabric samples. Jamie stepped forward nervously. Welcome everyone. Today we're teaching fashion, sort of. Humans wear clothes for comfort, identity, and respect. Zarn here sees clothes as experiments. Together we're going to mix both ideas." Zarn clapped his hands. "Yes, let us begin with socks." The crowd burst into laughter as Zarn dramatically placed socks on his arms, head, and even one, on his glowing tail. Students followed, putting socks in silly places and laughing together. Next came scarves. Zarn demonstrated the glowing scarves, careful this time not to let them strangle anyone. Students wrapped them in creative ways, around waists, tied like belts, even braided together to make rope. Jamie explained human history as they went. Scarves were once for warmth. Later they became fashion. That's the thing about humans, we turn tools into culture. Aliens in the crowd nodded, fascinated. Cultural exchange soon. Aliens shared their own ideas. A tall reptilian student demonstrated how his people decorated scales with shimmering dust. A bird-like alien explained how feathers were arranged for status in her society. Humans listened closely, amazed by the variety. Zarn was thrilled. "Yes, this is true fashion fusion. Each species has identity, but together we create something greater." Jamie smiled, realizing how much the workshop had grown beyond his control. But in a good way. Humans weren't just teaching aliens about clothes. Aliens were teaching humans about their traditions. For the first time, Jamie truly felt the meaning of the festival. Unity through difference. The grand finale to end the workshop. Zarn unveiled one last creation. Behold the Harmony outfit. It was a simple jacket but decorated with patches from every culture represented at the festival. Human logos, alien patterns, Xiphorian glowing threads. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't dangerous, but it was beautiful. Zarn held it up proudly. "This outfit is not just fabric, it is proof that we can learn from one another." Jamie stepped forward and smiled. "Humans are special because we adapt. We take ideas, even from chaos, and turn them into something meaningful. And today we've shown that fashion can unite us, not by being perfect, but by being shared." The hall erupted into applause, a new beginning. After the workshop, students kept wearing their silly sock hats and glowing scarves around campus. It became a trend. Some professors shook their heads, but even they couldn't hide smiles. Jamie and Zarn became known as the fashion ambassadors. They were invited to future events not just to show off clothing but to talk about cultural understanding. One night back in their dorm, Jamie sat on his bed and looked at Zarn. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were going to drive me crazy, and you did. But you also made me realize something. Humans aren't special because we're perfect. We're special because we can laugh, learn, and adapt, even when our roommate forgets what clothes do." Zarn chuckled. "And Xiphorians are lucky to have humans as teachers. Without you, I would still believe socks were only for feet." Jamie laughed. "You still don't fully believe that." Zarn grinned mischievously and put a sock on his elbow. "True," Jamie shook his head, smiling. "Well, at least you're consistent." Closing scene. The lights dimmed as they prepared for bed. Outside, the colony glowed with festival lights. Jamie thought about how strange his life had become since Zarn arrived. Strange, chaotic, embarrassing, but also better. Humans were special because they could turn disaster into connection, because they could teach and be taught, and because even in the middle of chaos, they could still smile. As Jamie drifted off to sleep, he heard Zarn whisper, softly, "Phase 7, friendship forever." Jamie groaned half asleep. "If Phase 7 involves underwear, I'm moving out." Zarn laughed quietly, his glowing skin shimmering like stars.